Hi, my name is Jonathan Makili, and welcome to my Human Resource and Business Management Insights. So today I'm going to discuss with you guys termination of a contract of employment, but I'll focus more on dismissal and the 4 types of dismissal. Now, dismissal simply refers to the termination of an employee's contract by the employer, regardless of the reason or circumstances. So there are 4 common types of dismissal, which are Alright, so number 1, we have wrongful dismissal. So this is where the employer terminates the contract of employment contrary to the law. So an example I can give on wrongful dismissal is maybe a situation where an employee gets dismissed without being given notice or a payment in lieu of notice, despite having a contractual agreement that specifies the total number of days that this employee is to get as a notice period. So it's a wrongful dismissal because the employment conduct or the law has clearly stated that every employer needs to provide notice or a payment in lieu of notice before terminating the contract of employment for employees. So in such a situation, the employees can easily sue their employer for breach of contract. Okay, so number 2, we have unfair dismissal. Unlike wrongful dismissal, unfair dismissal, this is where the employer terminates the contract of employment contrary to the code of conduct or the terms of employment. So now briefly, a code of conduct is simply a set of rules, guidelines, and policies that governs an organization. So each organization has got its own unique code of conduct, and this code of conduct outlines a lot of things, one of them being the procedure for disciplinary actions. So ladies and gentlemen, a basic disciplinary process needs to have like 4 stages. So like it has to start with a verbal warning, then followed by a written warning, then followed by suspensions, then lastly dismissal. So an example which I can give under unfair dismissal can be maybe a situation where an employee gets dismissed for poor performance without being given any prior warnings. Like the employer just decides to dismiss the employee right there and then, instantly, without any warnings. So this can be unfair because the employer did not follow what's there in the code of conduct. So just like wrongful dismissal, employees who believe that they have been unfairly dismissed can sue their employer for breach of contract. Okay, so number 3, we have summary dismissal. So summary dismissal, this is where the employer terminates the contract of employment when an employee is in fundamental breach of the code of conduct or the terms of employment. So this time around, it's the employee who's in the wrong. So an employer can summarily dismiss an employee in the following circumstances. So number 1, willful disobedience to lawful orders given to them by the employers. So this is protected by law because the law states that every employee has the duty to willfully follow lawful orders which are given to them by their employers. So an employee who's not following lawful orders given to them by the employers can be summarily dismissed. Then number 2, lack of skill which the employee expressly or impliedly is warranted to possess. So this usually comes in maybe, let's say during job interviews, an employee lied to say they possess certain skills which are needed to perform a certain task. So, and then after that employee is given the job, then they fail to perform. So in such a situation, an employer can rightfully summarily dismiss that employee because they're failing to perform. Then number 3 is for a misconduct under an employer's rules where the punishment is summary dismissal. So such a situation can be maybe where an employee is caught stealing company resources and the punishment for that in the code of conduct is summary dismissal. So yeah. Alright, and now the last type of dismissal is constructive dismissal. So this is where an employer's behavior becomes intolerable and it causes an employee to resign or terminate the contract of employment. So this is straightforward, but an example I can give is maybe a situation where an employee is subjected to continuous bullying or harassment by their manager and it creates a hostile environment for them, and then they later decide to resign or terminate the contract of employment. So that's constructive dismissal. And however, constructive dismissal can also be proven. So if an employee is able to prove to the court that it was constructive dismissal, they can sue their employer for damages.